I'm one of the co-owners of Run, Try, Bike, and want to say thank you for joining us here on our Fireside Chats on Tuesdays. We will be talking to John Duquette, CEO of blueseventy, here in a moment. But first, I want to just go over a couple of things with you guys that we're working on and we're a part of and want to make sure that you guys know about. One is the Boise Running Idaho Running Day taking place on September 17th at Lucky Peak State Park in Boise, Idaho. Go to boiserunning.com, register for that event, 5K, 10K, half marathon, and marathon. The She Strong Monarch Triathlon, it's an all-women's event that is a unique point-to-point event taking place in Kingman, Arizona on October 22nd. You can go to shestronginc.com, go to their events and get more information there. Race Chingona, the Tour de las Chingonas, which will be taking place on November 19th, 2022 in San Antonio, Texas. All women's ride that you have options of 10, 20, 40 or 65 mile bike rides, fully supported. You can go to tourdelaschingonas.com for that information. Lastly, before we bring John on, is as you guys can see, I have a Run, Try, Bike trucker cap. This truck I have for sale on our site, runtrymag.com. And you can go click on shop and purchase this hat. 20% of the proceeds from the purchase will go to fund 2 scholarships through Fund Her Try, which will send 2 women triathletes to a race and have their race event covered. So help support Fund Her Try. Lynn is a great advocate for women in triathlon, and she's definitely got something going over there with Fund Her Try. So please support them. Purchase the hat, trucker hat. They'll go out as soon as you place the order. So thank you very much. We'll be joined by John Duquette of blueseventy here in a moment. And we'll be talking about all things swimming, really. You know, their hashtag is all for the swim. And so we'll be talking to him about all the different things that have been taking place since their inception back in 1993. And without further ado, perfect timing. John, thank you for joining us.
Hello.
So I was just briefly introducing the folks to Run, Try, Bike and to you about blueseventy, and you guys are using the hashtag all for the swim. And so I want to make sure that we're going to be covering that. And for those of you that are in the audience that have questions for John, there's a little question mark on the bottom of the screen. If you could just tap that, put your questions in there, we'll be sure to get them answered for you guys, and it helps us to keep it organized. So John, like I mentioned to the audience before you jumped on, you guys started back in 1993. So 30 years of, all for the swim. What has been the biggest development that you've seen over that time frame?
For a long time, we called ourselves a swimming company, but the vast majority of our customers were triathletes. I mean, probably 85, 90%. And over the last probably 10 years, open water swimming, just swimmers, people who don't bike and run, has gotten more and more popular. And then, of course, that just exploded during the pandemic when all the pools closed. So what that did, especially in the past probably 2 or 3 years, was have us start thinking not just to make wetsuits fast, but to make them comfortable, and to realize that there are a lot of customers who aren't trying to win races or win their age group, but they just want to be really comfortable in the open water. And that's been really good, because we've thought about the details like necks and arm cuffs and things like that, where, an athlete, you tell them, oh, it's supposed to be uncomfortable and here's why, they'll deal with it. But a lot of the more fitness swimmers, I'd call them, don't understand why it has to be uncomfortable. They're not trying to shave seconds. They just want to be comfortable in the open water. And the other big thing, this goes back 15 years, but swim skins, the invention of the swim skin has been huge in triathlon. Everybody swims faster and more confident now in non-wetsuit swims.
Yeah, and I would encourage you folks to go to blueseventy.com and look at their history. You scroll to the bottom of their website, they have a history up there. And you can see where the progression has changed from 93 through today, and the different components, right, with FINA being approved, swim skins being approved, and how that has transpired into triathlon and Ironman. And one of the things you mentioned, which I have this question later on, but I think, you brought it up, is from our perspective, we see athletes getting involved in multi-sport, not just triathlon. And so one of the things that I'm trying to do out here is create a swim run event out here in Arizona. And has that become a bigger part of your business over time where you see multi-sport athletes? You mentioned it with the pandemic, but are there certain specific things for swim run events that you guys are creating now that would help athletes?
Yeah, swim run is certainly more popular in Europe than it is in the US right now. I think swim run had some pretty good momentum in the US from about 2018 until the pandemic. And I think the pandemic kind of squashed that a little bit. We do make a swim run suit. There's always kind of an argument in swim run circles whether it should be a running suit that you could swim in or swimming suit that you could run in, because those are two very different things. We err on the side of making a durable but comfortable suit that swims well. It's a wetsuit. I don't think you're ever going to be all that comfortable running in a wetsuit. I think swim run is held back by the extreme nature of the distances that are covered. I understand the spirit of wanting to do an epic course and see some really cool scenery and say, man, I did that. And the way the sport was born in, in Sweden, where they swam from island to island and ran across them. But generally speaking, you're talking about events that go between 6 and 10 hours. They're basically Ironman efforts. And I think that's really intimidating to a lot of more recreational athletes who don't see themselves as Ironmans. They just want to go out and, be active for 2 or 3 hours on a weekend day.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was looking at here. We go swimming on the weekend up here in Lake Pleasant outside of Phoenix, and where the lake is, there are plenty of trails. And I just thought to myself, we raced out here. There's got to be a way to connect this swimming in the lake to something like that, and literally talking like maybe a 2-mile swim and maybe a 10K run all together, not spending 6 to 8 hours out there, and especially not in the Arizona sun doing that kind of stuff. There's no way.
That certainly sounds more appealing to me.
So another thing that I've noticed lately is more companies that aren't, quote unquote, as you guys use the hashtag, all for the swim, developing more swim products to, I guess, compete in that area, to try to figure out where to get into. Have you guys ever considered over the course of the 30 years developing products for outside of swimming?
We've done tri-apparel off and on. We try to stay in our lane. And I started with the company in 2007 and was fortunate enough to be able to buy it in 2017. And I feel very strongly in the term limit and own. I don't want to overextend myself and start making cycling bib shorts and running shoes and sunglasses. We have a small team of very passionate athletes in the office, and frankly, we all ride our bikes and we all run, but swimming is what we know, and swimming is what we just try to stay in our lane and do. So, I have no doubt if we did a size run of bib shorts and cycling jerseys, we'd sell through them pretty quick, and that might be fun. But then, okay, all of a sudden you've got 3 colors of the jerseys, and you got 2 prints, and all of a sudden you got skews coming out of your eyes, and pretty soon, inevitably inventory kind of always catches up with you. So I take a lot of pride in being a relatively small company and a company that's very accessible. We just have one phone number, and I might pick it up as the owner of the company and help you with sizing. I might have taped your box shut this morning for your online order. And you might meet me out on a beach doing demos in Lake Placid or something like that. And I want to keep us small and just keep us as swim specialists.
Yeah, that makes sense. One of the things that, we talk about between Ohm and Angela and myself is know what you do and be good at it, right? As opposed to trying to reach into other pockets and other areas and fill up a bucket, and then something leaks out the bottom for sure. Inevitably, something's going to leak out the bottom. Totally. That leads me to a question for you about R&D. If, and as a person who's wasn't born and raised a swimmer, give me a pair of trunks, let me go swim, get out of the water and be done with it. And so I would think all the things for swimming have already been done. How do you go about with research and development, trying to figure out what the next components need to be for wetsuits, for swim skins, for jammers, that kind of stuff?
It's been really interesting because from the beginning, the people doing our design were elite level, sub 55-minute Ironman level swimmers, former college swimmers who knew a lot about swimming, and they swam very fast, and they were competitive. So it's a snowball. This guy developed this, and then this guy kind of made it a little bit better, and now we have a better material to deal with and better understanding. And so I can't say at this point our suits are particularly faster than they were, say, 5 years ago, but I'm going to come back to comfort because 3 years ago, uh, we lost a very talented designer who was a collegiate swimmer to Brooks Running, and the guy who stepped into his place is more of a mid-pack athlete with a mid-pack mentality, and what that means is he's questioning everything. Obviously you want buoyancy in the legs, but why does the neck have to be so tight? Why do the wrists have to be so darn tight? Can we loosen this up? What can we do to make it more comfortable? So that's really, really been kind of nice because he's taken these R&D designs that were 20 years in the making, and they're really fast and they fit people really well. But now he's really looking at details, moving seam lines just a little bit to alleviate chafing. We've been noticing a lot of Velcro tabs rubbing little holes in the shoulders. And just this morning, it's like, well, what if we change the shape of the Velcro tab where, nobody's ever really taken a good look at that before. So I'm very fortunate to have him. And those are the kind of little things that we're looking at right now. When you're looking at the performance of a piece of equipment or a garment, it always starts with the materials. And, we use all Yamamoto rubber in our range, which is the best Japanese rubber, but we're not designing rubber. We're reliant on Yamamoto to come to us and say, we've been working on this. We think it will work well here. And then we test it and send it to our athletes and whatnot, get samples made. And because they could send us the lab report, but if Eric Lagerstrom swims in it and says this feels like crap, then it doesn't matter, right? So, when we say all for the swim, we used to say, this is our lab. This is our lab, meaning, I swim Monday, Wednesday, Friday mornings, and I'm swimming in our goggles and our suits. And I'm in a master's group, and hey, everybody, we're looking at this new hand paddle. Here's 5 samples. Who wants to try them today and get real feedback from swimmers and from coaches and not just dudes in lab coats and clipboards. It's a kind of totally different thing.
Absolutely. So it seems like based on that commentary that getting feedback from your customers is super important because that's how you guys can then create the next thing, so to speak.
Absolutely. And our designer actually does customer service too. So when 4 people call him the same day and say, why is my neck so tight in my sprint suit? He's like, man, we got to do something about the neck in our sprint suit. It's a fun little circle that we've got there where he's the one getting feedback on his own designs.
So for everybody who's on this call, go to their site, leave them feedback, go to Google reviews, leave them feedback. It helps not only them be able to generate new business and more business, but obviously make adjustments to the swimsuits. And as a small business owner myself, we know how important those reviews are because we're doing it for you guys. For those of you who have just joined us, my name is Jason Bahamundi. We're on our Tuesday Fireside Chats with John Duquette, owner of Blue70. We're discussing all things for the swim, which is the hashtag that if you search under, you'll find Blue70, but also make sure you visit their website, blueseventy.com, and @Blue70 on all of the social channels. And you'll be inspired to swim just because some of the pictures are amazing. I think there was one not that long ago set in a mountain scene with the snow in the background. And, being here in Phoenix in the desert, seeing that makes you feel a little bit cooler despite it being 105 degrees every day out here. For swimmers and triathletes that are just getting started, which is essentially what our audience is, John, what should they be looking to acquire, purchase, put in their swim bag, both for open water and for pool swimming?
I think everybody should start in the pool. Even if you've signed up for your first triathlon, you've never taken a stroke before, you start in the pool and you get comfortable in the pool. And to be an effective pool swimmer, you need 2 things. You need a swimsuit and you need goggles. And people always ask about goggles, what goggles are right for me. And it's a bit like running shoes. I can't tell you, oh, definitely try these. I can tell you what I like, but it's more an issue of why do you like what you do like. And goggles generally come in 2 styles. They come in the hard plastic gasket that fit inside your eyelids, and they come with the bigger plastic that fit over your eyelids. And generally speaking, experienced swimmers, fastest swimmers like the smaller goggles that fit inside your eye socket, and the more novice swimmers like the bigger goggles that fit over their eye sockets. And there's definitely some trial and error there. There's certainly no one goggle that's best for everybody. So I would encourage anybody to buy a few pair of goggles that have different characteristics and see what you like, or just borrow goggles from your friends. And, you know, sometimes if I forget goggles, I just tell the lifeguard, hey, I left my goggles here. Can I check your lost and found? And there's inevitably 20 pair of goggles in the lost and found, and you could try different, kind of a cheap way to try different ones on. So yeah, I mean, you start with the swimsuit and goggles. I mean, a kickboard and pull buoy are pretty important tools for learning to swim, but most pools have those on deck that you could just borrow for your session. When it comes to open water, the reason you wear a wetsuit is not so much warmth, it's buoyancy. So everybody swims faster in a wetsuit, and the worse swimmer you are, the more you benefit from wearing a wetsuit, because when your body's covered in that 5mm rubber, it floats on its own. So you don't have to expend energy maintaining a streamlined position. The suit does that work for you, and you can put your energy into propelling yourself forward. So typically, yeah, especially in warm weather climates, or warm water climates, you can go without a wetsuit, but you'll see everybody from good swimmers to bad swimmers wearing a wetsuit whenever it's legal, because they swim significantly faster, and it's safer too. I would argue, if as long as you're not having a medical emergency, you couldn't drown in a wetsuit because it keeps you up on the surface. You know, you could find a wetsuit in the $200-$250 range, and those will certainly get you through it. But if you're at all an enthusiast, you know you're going to do more than one triathlon or more than one open water session. You're going to swim in the lake once a week or more all summer long and do a couple triathlons. Moving to that price point in the 300s, you get such a better suit. It's just like buying a bike. You could buy the cheapest bike, but then if you really like cycling, you're immediately going to want to buy a different bike right away. So if you buy just the next level up, you get, for us, you get a more flexible suit, you get a more buoyant suit, you get a more comfortable suit, and you're not going to finish your first triathlon and think, man, I need a better wetsuit. It's going to be able to grow with you.
Yeah, and let me tell you, folks, like, make the investment in this equipment, because you could end up buying something at 200 and then after one season think to yourself, I need something different, and spend 350 to 400. Make the investment. It'll last you a long time, and it totally will be worth it. One thing I will tell you, John, is the headbands that you guys sell, for those of you who are swimming in cold water and don't want to get that sort of brain freeze, that thing is magical. When we swam out here in March, it was so cold. I ordered one of those headbands, and the very next week, you know, I had it for the next week's swim, and it was ideal. Like, it was like totally being able to swim in comfortable water. So if you're racing, if there's, you know, Coeur d'Alene or Penticton, which I'm assuming will have cold water, even Ironman Arizona has cold water, that headband was magical, and used it basically all March and into the beginning of April here, where the wet water was cold for us. It's definitely a must buy for folks. One question we have on here, it's actually not a question, but one thing I do want to talk about is, I know as an Ironman triathlete myself, I've cut sleeves so that I didn't have to like take my watch off to pull it off. Is there something that athletes, when they're looking to buy a wetsuit and they're going to your sizing charts, to look for in terms of, you know, sleeve length and length on the legs that they need to be concerned about? And if they do have to cut it, is there an impact to the wetsuit?
So we size our wetsuits by height and weight. Weight is more important than height. If you're tall and thin, your legs might end at mid shin. And if you're, you know, a little bit on the shorter side and thicker side, then the legs are going to go all the way down. Typically, we don't trim arms. We say if the arm is a little bit too long, you want to gather all the excess rubber you can, so that's up on the top of the suit, and just set it up on the top of the shoulder there, which opens up your flexibility. It's not doing any harm there. The way that the sleeves are constructed with the catch panel, you don't really want to cut that. You also lose that nice seal at the cuff, so you're going to start getting water up your arm. The legs, on the other hand, I know the ITU guys will cut their legs. I saw Matt Sharp just join this, and he's an Olympian, so he probably cuts the legs of his suit. The ITU guys and girls, pros, do it because they could get out of the suit faster, and they don't need that extra 6 inches of buoyancy at the bottom of their legs to swim fast. The reason an age grouper might do it is if they are finding the legs are a little bit long, they go to their ankle or beyond. You can cut the legs of the suit. If you take a suit and turn it inside out, there's always a seam that runs down the back of the leg. And when you turn it inside out, you'll see some tape that covers the seam for 6 inches up that seam. So you could cut up to 6 inches with no issues. If you cut above where the tape ends, which would be pretty rare to have to do that. But if you were hypothetically to cut above that, then the seam could come unraveled. So, but yeah, I mean, trimming a couple inches off the bottom of your leg isn't a big deal. But I mean, typically, once again, it would be a situation when the suit is going past your ankles, which is pretty rare.
Yeah, I would imagine. I mean, 6 inches is a lot of distance to cover if you're cutting from your ankle up your shin. I mean, you basically would have probably ordered a size too big and probably would need to send it back before cutting that much off of it. One of the things I noticed on your website was a link for FemFit. And 70% of our audience is women. And I'd love for you to talk about that a little bit more. Because as I was reading through it, it just seemed to jive a lot with who our audience is.
Yeah, and interestingly, through the history of the company, we've sold about 55% men's suits and 45% women's suits. But 2020, the year of the pandemic, was the first year ever we sold more women's suits than men's. And I think there are more women who swim for fitness than men who swim for fitness. And once again, pools were closed, so they went in the open water and they needed wetsuits. Last year, it was dead even between men and women. So as a segment, women are growing in our company, which is great. We have always done a men's specific pattern and a women's specific pattern. What has made Blue-70 so successful through the years is simply the fit of our wetsuits. Technology wise, you know, you could have 5 different salespeople from 5 different wetsuit brands and they could rattle off all this stuff about why their wetsuits are superior, but you're always going to swim fastest and be most comfortable in the suit that fits you the best. And our particular patterns seem to fit the greatest amount of people. Our women's pattern is wider in the hips and the zipper goes lower than in the men's, so it's easier for the women to get the suit over the hips. The neck is a little bit narrower, the arms are a little bit thinner. And then one thing I take particular pride in, before I worked at Blue-70, I worked at a retailer where we sold wetsuits. And that woman who was between 5'5" and 5'7" and maybe 170, 180 pounds was always such a challenge from every company. No wetsuit company made a wetsuit that fit that particular customer, but that is such a major part of beginner triathletes and of fitness swimmers. So in 2013, when I was working here, I took it upon myself to develop a new size, the WMA size, which is essentially the height of the women's medium, but kind of the volume of the women's extra large, kind of between large and extra large. And that quickly became our top selling size in the women's suits. And we're, as far as I know to this day, we're the only company who makes a suit that bridges that gap with the height of the medium and the width of the large. So that's something I'm pretty proud of because that was my kind of pet project.
That's amazing. And really cool to have taken the ability to see that as a salesperson and craft that into a suit. So kudos to you. One thing you mentioned was the pandemic and we've all suffered from it, you know, events closing down, you know, events are starting to come back now, but supply chain issues. Talk a little bit about how it impacted your company and where do you see it coming out on the other side, I guess, at this point?
Like I said, more women's suits than men's suits. There were 2 particular product categories, our least expensive suit called the Sprint, and then our thermal reaction suit, which is pretty expensive, but those were 2 that just jumped. I mean, we sold 4 times more thermal reactions than we ever had. And if we had gotten more, we would have sold them. You know, I come from the running world, and one thing that always kind of amazed me about runners is the concept of a stress fracture where, man, this hurts, but I'm going to keep running on it because I need to run. And one little saying I've got in the office now is that swimmers need to swim because there are people calling us and with a straight face, hey, the lake's 52 degrees. It's still March. I'm getting cold. What can I do to not get cold? I got the thermal wetsuit and I got the thermal accessories, but I'm still getting cold. And well, the water's really cold. That's why. But and then you're like, swimmers need to swim. And if that's their exercise and they can't get into the pool, they're going to find a way to swim. So that was really, really kind of neat time for our company because we met a lot of new people. We talked to customers and we learned from them and they learned from us, and it was really neat. And once again, we changed the neck in our sprint suit specifically because these swimmers didn't understand why it felt so uncomfortable, and we really asked ourselves if it had to be that uncomfortable. And now that neck change is actually this year throughout our entire line. So that was really neat. And if it weren't for that pandemic, we'd probably still have a lot of returns on sprints because the neck was a little bit too tight for novice swimmers. The lack of events, yeah, I mean, that was an interesting time. I mean, we talked a lot about products that were more for open water swimming, but I'll be honest, as soon as the pools opened over the winter, a lot of that business dried up. I still think there are a lot more open water swimmers, certainly locally here in Seattle. You see them out there. I was riding my bike yesterday morning at 6 a.m. out of Golden Gardens, and there were a bunch of people getting in the water. And I don't know if there were that many doing it before the pandemic. So that's been nice, but we're definitely back selling mostly to triathletes at this point. And now we want to see the sport of triathlon grow. And I was really kind of excited on Saturday morning. I went for a ride out here in Seattle, and there was a sprint and Olympic triathlon happening. And I rode out to watch it. And there were a lot of people on, mountain bikes and their commuter bikes and cruiser bikes. And that's exactly what you want to see, because it means it's not just the same people doing triathlon that have been doing it for 10 years and they're on $8,000 bikes. These are all opportunities for the sport to grow, which was great to see.
Yeah, we talked to Keith Hughes last week, who's the race director for Boise Running. And one of the things that he mentioned was getting kids, teenagers involved in running in those 5Ks and 10Ks, because that's going to be, where they start before they move into the half marathon area. And one of the things that we've noticed is people riding bike cruisers, mountain bikes, just getting involved in some form or fashion, which will hopefully be the planted seed that gets them going into growing into the sport as they move along. And whether it be any sort of multi-sport, because that's another thing that we've seen a lot of is duathlons, swim run events, relays have become a bigger thing for a lot of events too, that we have noticed as well. And so, that's just a way for people to get more and more involved in these sports in various ways, and hopefully push the pandemic behind us and get people more active in those sports.
You bet.
One of the things that you said to me over a year ago, and I don't know if you remember this, but you asked the question of what was the end game for Run, Try, Bike. And I don't know if my answer was good enough back then, but I'd like to reverse the tables for you. What do you want to see blueseventy become in this endurance sports world? What's the ultimate end game for you guys?
As a business owner, there are some good times and there are some tough times, right? I mean, there's a lot of 4 a.m. freakouts, and I think about that a lot. And I know for a fact that there are people in our space who are just trying to pump up the numbers so they could sell it. And that's not who I am. You're going to see me doing this in another 10 years for sure. I'll be 45 in a couple months here. And it provides me with just a fantastic living. I won the lottery in this life because I've been in the endurance industry since I got out of college, basically. And I put in my time working for $8 an hour on the floor of a running store and kind of climbed the ladder for the last 25 years. So my end game is not to sell to venture capital and retire to Tahiti or something. Not at this point. That retirement would be more like retirement to Boise. But we want to keep making really good products. We're just so passionate about products. There's not a day that goes by we don't talk about product and if it's good or bad or, what could be better. And I honestly took a long time off swimming when I got out of triathlon. And just in the past year, I've really gotten back into swimming, which has been so good because now I'm using our products, not, I better go swim in this, so I'm going to do my one swim for the month. But Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 6:30 to 7:30 in the morning, I'm there and I'm grinding it out and then sprinkling some other swims here and there, and I'm enjoying it. So, and it just makes me that much more passionate about what we do. So I'm rambling a bit, but the end game is to make really good product. Of course, we want to grow. We used to be stronger in pool swimming than we are now. So the focus, honestly, is more for pool competition stuff. We've got some exciting new suits that just got released, and we've got more coming out this fall. So we need to grow that team business and and hire people from a competitive swim background. So that's kind of where we're looking is get stronger in the pool. But the end game is to be a really positive company that tries to make products that does make products to help people achieve everything they want to achieve, whether they're swimming in the pool or the open water.
You said you bought the company in 2013?
17.
2017. I'm assuming you had a 5, a 10, 15, 20-year plan, some plan into the future. In your mind, are you on pace for that business based on what you just said, that you're looking at keeping this company, not selling it to VCs? Or like, are you there on pace? Or is this something that you're like, you know what, I think if we can do X, we will get to what my dream was?
We are behind pace for a few reasons. First of all, you can't grow your pool competition business when there are no pool competitions, right?
Right.
And so the pandemic definitely threw us for a loop. Before the pandemic, we actually had some interesting manufacturing issues over a 2-year period. We had some defective rubber where luckily they found it at the factory, but so it's not like the suits went to market, but we had something like 4,000 suits that had to be remade, and the rubber had to be remade. And then the next year, Yamamoto had a bunch of problems. So it's been years since I've been sitting on a pile of wetsuits trying to figure out how I could sell them. Inventory's been hand to mouth, and anybody who's really been connected to the brand might be frustrated because they're constantly trying to buy something, or their friends are trying to buy something, and it feels like we never have it. And we're finally getting caught up on inventory here. I mean, our warehouse is pretty good now, and we'll be better in another month. So then I get to figure out how I'm going to sell all these, which is a much better problem to have, I guess. I can't remember how we got there. But
I was asking, when you bought the company in 2017.
Oh yeah. So no, we've been behind, but at the same time, we've had a lot of small victories. When the pandemic hit, probably every business owner in the country freaked out. I thought we're not going to sell anything, and website traffic goes to zero, online sales go to zero, phone stops ringing, and then a week goes by, and the whole country's like, oh, well, maybe I could just go outside. And then, right? So then all of a sudden the mountain bike trailhead is full, and all of a sudden we're selling wetsuits to people who are going to swim off, the harbor in Seattle and Puget Sound that's 48 degrees, and they're convinced it's not that cold. And then I go skiing, and the ski area is jam packed, and all good things. But my point is, 2020 ended up being a lot better than year than I expected. Is same as 2021. So I feel like we're closing the gap, but once again, we need to get stronger in the pool. And, speaking honestly, that just takes a leap of faith on my part to really put the finance behind it, hire the right people, fill the warehouse with inventory, and give them the tools to succeed.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you just said is the right thing, right? It's a leap of faith, because as a small business owner, we launched this business literally in January of 2021 when the pandemic was at its height and people weren't racing and events were being canceled. But I took a leap of faith to start this business because I thought we would see people, like you mentioned earlier, on mountain bikes, on cruisers, just getting outside and going to do things for the first time and looking for a resource. Like, I don't know what kind of helmet I need to buy or what pedals I need to get. And we wanted to be that resource. And so I appreciate you talking to us and this group here as a business owner, because I think one thing that people tend to forget is that there are human beings behind these businesses. They buy a wetsuit and it might be too big or too small, and they get angry, and it's like, okay, but just text them or email and talk to the business owner who happens to be you. Like you said, you might answer the call earlier in the day. And so people need to understand that you are, running a business and you're doing the best you can to help them out as well. When you talk about getting into the pool competition, what does that actually mean? Is it working with swim teams across the country, collegiate level, high school level, club teams, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, it's club teams in high school, mostly collegiate teams to some degree. But we're a company of 30 and 40-year-old white guys and girls, and we're really good at marketing to 30 and 40-year-old triathletes, but we're not great at talking to 15, 16-year-old swimmers. So I do have somebody in the East Coast now who comes from a swim background, and kind of starting the process, but we need to get some team business, and need to work more closely with swim retailers. And back in 2013, 2014, even back to 08, when we developed those suits that are now banned, we definitely had a lot of kind of, we got some experience there, and we just need to go revisit those relationships and get it back on track.
For those of you that are listening, I want to reiterate a couple of things that John mentioned. So he had a stockpile of wetsuits that had issues from Yamamoto and the rubber. He had a swim skin that got banned, right? Failure is a key part of success. And that's not just as a business owner, but as an athlete as well. You may bonk on a run or a ride. You may not hit a PR, but keep putting in the effort and work to get yourself to lay that groundwork to success. We are almost out of time, John. Is there anything you want to tell the audience before we jump into our rapid fire, especially let them know where they can find Blue70 on the internet and social channels?
Yeah, I mean, blueseventy.com. We worked with a number of retailers, both brick and mortar and online. If you have a local retailer, we always prefer you go to your local retailer, because you can get a proper hands-on fit, and you're supporting your local retailer. I mean, I grew up out of college working for a small independent retailer selling shoes and wetsuits and whatnot. And so I've got a soft spot in my heart for them. And I would hate to see our industry without those guys.
Awesome. So before we jump into the rapid fire, guys, if you go to, I hate to spin away from the brick and mortar in the shop, guys, but you can get a 20% discount through blueseventy.com using RTB20. So make sure you use that. Quick rapid fire question. So when you're running, John, do you listen to music, podcast, or nothing at all?
Nothing at all. I can't understand why people listen to music when they run, personally.
I'm in agreement with you. Let me listen to nature, birds. If you're running along Puget Sound, you must hear the water. It must be excellent.
Yep, you bet.
On your pizza, is pineapple a yay or a nay?
I will eat it, but if I'm ordering it, I won't get it. If you served it to me, I'd have no problem eating it, though.
There you go. Candy corn. Is it a real candy, or is it really just candle wax?
No, it's a real candy for sure. Actually, I know this is supposed to be rapid, but when I worked at the running store, I did a 64-team bracket of candies, and I had the candy bar region and the chocolate bar region, chocolate pieces region, etc. And everybody had to vote like they were games. And it all came together, and the final two candies were peanut M&Ms and candy corn. Candy corn made the finals out of 64 candies.
There's no way.
Peanut M&Ms won it, which beat regular M&Ms earlier in the tournament, which blew my mind. But so people love candy corn. Anyway, you can proceed.
In on that. There's no way. What about Peeps?
Oh,
Yeah.
I cannot stand Peeps. My wife and my kids, they love Peeps, but no, I'm not stealing those out of my kids' Easter baskets.
Do your wife and your kids love them as like stale Peeps? Because we've asked this question and about 10 people in a row have said, but you have to wait till they get stale. And to me, now you're eating a doorstop, but what do I know?
I don't think they're around long enough to get stale.
What about circus peanuts?
No, trash.
What about red velvet cake?
Oh, yeah, I like red velvet cake for sure.
But isn't it nothing more than just chocolate cake with red dye, red food dye?
No. Well, first of all, you got the cream cheese frosting.
True.
And then the cake's a little different.
All right. So favorite movie?
Man, that's too hard. I mean, Goodfellas is great, but we've been talking a lot about Dazed and Confused lately. I mean, too many good options.
Last book you read?
What did I just... Oh, I read Crack Hour. Crack Hour came out. There was a compilation of his articles that were written in the 80s and 90s, and I really like Crack Hour, so I enjoyed that. Just finished it.
Awesome. John, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for being a huge supporting partner to Run, Try, Bike. Again, that question you asked me back in February, I remember I was on my way to a 100-mile race, and you asked me a question, and you said, what's the end game for Run, Try, Bike? And while I don't have the full answer yet, we are definitely working on something for next year that will be a part of what our end game is, for sure. Thank you very much for all of your support, and thank you for joining us on this call. For those of you who missed any part of it, it'll be on our website. Go across to runtrimag.com across the top, Fireside Chats. Just click on that tab. It'll be one of the new ones added by the end of the week, or to our YouTube channel as well. John, have a great day. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.